Hello and welcome back to the Film Posers YouTube channel. My name is Juan, and today I am joined by my lovely co-host. I am joined by Anna, and I am rejoined once again on the YouTube channel by the main guy from Criticólogos. He is an icon, he is a legend, and he is here to stay. Rafy Mediavilla, welcome back.
Thank you for inviting me and excited. I'm always excited when I come into the show and obviously talk to you guys. And it's always like big movies, which is the weird thing when I'm
Yeah,
here for big like monumental epic movies like Dune. So I'm excited. Thank you.
of course. So as Rafi mentioned, we will be talking today about Dune. Now, we just recently went to a very special screening. Thank you to Warner Brothers for allowing us the chance to see it. And we are going to be talking about Dune. Now, you might have seen on our YouTube channel, Gabriela and Josie had the honor of seeing it at the New York Film Festival before us. So while they did a spoiler-free review, we felt it'd be cool to do a spoiler-filled review because you got to have some talks about some of the stuff that happens afterwards. There is a lot to unpack with Dune. So we're just going to get right into it. Dune is based on the 1965 Frank Herbert novel. It is a long-awaited adaptation from Denis Villeneuve. It stars Timothy Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, Oscar Isaac, Zendaya, Jason Momoa, Dave Bautista, and a whole lot of many talented people. So we're going to start by getting into our first reactions of Dune. And it's only fair that we start off with our guest, Rafi. What was your
Yes,
first reaction to Dune? Now, this episode's gonna be in Spanglish. We're gonna add a little bit of sabor to this episode. It's gonna be Spanglish. So when you see
that
us code switching, that's when you know.
that
Bilingualism here
yeah,
to
that's
stay.
my main. My Latin tongue is English. I talk in English, Spanish, but anything. I mean, I'm a Star Wars fan. Let me go to that line, right? So I'm a Star Wars fan. I grew up on Star Wars, and obviously one of my first the one of the things that I see them I relate to it or I compare to what Star Wars, right? Because it's this epic world that Dennis created with the story, and that basically that's in essence that's what it is. So I always think I compared the movie and the story the way Dennis created with Star Wars because being in a futuristic world and everything like different subjects that we're going to talk about obviously a little bit later on the review. But I mean, I liked it because obviously I'm a fan of Star Wars. I liked it because I like this big momentum futuristic worlds that he created, and diving into to imagine yourself into these type of worlds. It just means you get really involved in them, mainly because of the score. I think the score plays a really huge role in you know you diving yourself into the story. I think Sam Stammer did an amazing job on just making yourself just feel what's going on the scenes. Um, but I think the only difference between Star Wars, me as a fan, obviously, and as a critic, is the Star Wars feels more like childish, more family driven, and this one is extremely mature. It's more for that adult audience, which again, to me, works like a double-edged sword because not general audience are not going to be able to enjoy it the same way that they're going to enjoy Star Wars because there's so many things going. And here we are character driven, we are story driven, it's important what's happening with the characters. It's not that it's not important in Star Wars, but there are many things going. It's important what's going on with the characters, important what's going with the environment. And we're going to talk that about the environment, I mean, in the review a little bit later. But it's important what's going on in the environment, in the character. So they do take, Dennis did take a lot of time developing what's going on with the characters and the environment. So because both of them play an important role in order to make tell the story. So that's the thing that I bother me. It's just like, okay, me being a Star Wars fan, I like the action. I like that it's dynamic. I want a lot of stuff to be happening. I don't want to be there just stuck in a moment. And that's something that you see through the whole 2 hours and 30 minutes of the story. I mean, that the length of the movie, you feel it. You can feel it from beginning to start, from start to end, because you see they dive into these long scenes when they're trying to explain what's going on with the character, what's going on with the situation, what's going on with the environment. And that's that thing that I feel that, not everybody is going to be able to, like, try to go through it, try to digest, try to process, try to enjoy. and it's not that there's a bad movie, it's a really good movie. I mean, the acting is, obviously I have to me, Timothée Chalamet and Rebecca Ferguson are the standout. To me, those two performances are the ones that stood out to me. But like you said, the casting is so good. Even De Batista, we got Oscar Isaac. I mean, um, um, Stella Skarsgård. I think everyone everyone did a sort of amazing job with their characters, and so that nothing when it comes to the actors, it's wrong. Everything works. Everything's fine. It's just that, to me, the story specifically is just not for everyone. I think not everyone will be able to dive into it, even though the score is perfect and invites you to dive into the story and into this world that Dennis created. I just think the story is I think it's so mature, it's so next level that not everybody will be able to just stay there for 2 hours and 20 minutes and just enjoy this epic world that Dennis created. It's difficult. It's a difficult sell for the average person.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of great points you brought up, which we're going to get into a little bit later. But I completely agree with what you said. I do feel this film was made for more the cinephile audience, those who are fans of the original novel. And as you mentioned with Star Wars takes a lot of inspiration from the novel of Dune, and it's very evident, especially with this adaptation. And you can also tell Denis Villeneuve had a lot of love for the property because he wanted to make sure he did the best he could with it. So now we're going to move on to Anna. And Anna, I'm curious to know, what were your thoughts on Denis Villeneuve's Dune?
So personally, I didn't know a lot about the source material. The reason is because I haven't read the book and I didn't watch the original film. Entering to this film, I thought Denis Villeneuve really knew how to do the world building. He had a really keen eye to it. I thought that the visuals were breathtaking, and Hans Zimmer's score definitely leaves you like in an entrancing experience, and by watching it in a theater definitely enhance the experience of watching this film. Now, when it comes to story wise, it was a little bit difficult to digest because it is a lot of information that the film definitely gives you, and also the pacing didn't help a lot in a sense that there's a moment that a lot is happening at once, and it cuts suddenly to there's just a big scene to it. So it was a little bit difficult to digest. On the other hand, even though that the story is really packed, I liked how they handle some serious themes throughout the film. I thought it made it more interesting because it made you think more, there's more than this like surface in the story. And I liked how they played out. Again, Dennis Villeneuve's like world building helped enhance the themes that they were giving throughout the film. I hope if we ever get another film, I just really want the themes to be explored more broadly because there was just, a little bit of salt, like a little bit of sazon, but it just wasn't there enough. Of course, it is part one.
Yeah, I think it's definitely safe to say that while it had some spice in there, it could have used some more.
I like that the whole mention the spice,
Of
the
course.
The
segue, the
salt
whole
and
the hint, the hint of spice, like you were doing the meme thing, right?
Exactly.
No, I mean, I like that you said that because it really, again, it's just, I think Sophia said something really important. It's just the story. This first part really need. We're going to talk about it a little bit later on the review, but we really do need a second part because the first part really felt a little bit planned. It just felt a little bit. I mean, it was just to some point. I mean, they didn't really dive into a lot of stuff that you would want them to dive beyond, obviously, Timothy Chalamet's character and Rebecca Ferguson's character, and at least the family itself, I think they turned them on them and the emperor. We're gonna talk about that later, obviously. But I think this first part just feels difficult to go through it, and you would want something more just to make it a little bit more interesting, or little, like you said, to spice it up. So yeah, I think, and I do like the mention of the spices. So we'll talk about
Yeah,
that later also.
it felt that they were, testing the waters with the audience in the first one. Because again, we don't know if we're even gonna get the second part of the story.
You mentioned something really important. It's just them, Warner Brothers and Dennis trying to put something out there to see how people react. I think we're going to talk about this about the at the end of the review, but how people are going to react to what they see, and then we'll go from there. It's like they're testing the water. Say, let's put this out there. I know we know it's not perfect. It's not perfect, obviously, but let's put it out there. Let's see how people react to it, and then again, I think I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll talk about the end later, but once they see the ending being so open, we can, on the second part, test the waters on something else, and then add more spices.
Yeah, I completely agree. For me, I'll be honest, I consider myself a mainstream viewer. And I knew of Dune, the novel, because I have a friend who I met in the first year of college. We're both English majors. We had like our little group, and she had explained to me Dune because she loves that book. And I understood parts of what was going on because I remembered what she told me. So I kind of had that advantage going into it. But again, I'm gonna reiterate what was already said. It's a visual delight. The cinematography is amazing. The score is hypnotic. The cast is amazing. However, while it works on every technical aspect, the story didn't click for me because, like Anna said, it was a little too long. The pacing affected this, and you understand why they have to do this because they only have so much time to cover so much material. But as a viewer, and since I'm a mainstream viewer, I'm not gonna lie, there were parts where I was a little bored and I checked my phone to see how much longer I was missing because I tried to go with the story, but there were just times where I felt like this might be a little too advanced for me. This is definitely a cinephile's Space Odyssey, a cinephile's Star Wars. For mainstream audiences, it may not completely connect because it does so much. I still feel that while I appreciate what Denis Villeneuve brings to the table, I do feel he's the perfect person to work on this property. That I can't argue because after seeing what he's done, I can't think of anyone else who could top that. So Dune is his property. I still feel though that it should have been a mini series on HBO Max where you had more time to explore everything. But as a film, I have one extra critique that I'm going to save towards the end. But overall, I can't say I didn't enjoy it. Like Rafy says, it is a really well made movie, but it's not going to be for everyone. There are aspects that just aren't going to work for everyone. I mean, I think in our screening, someone walked out, but that's probably because they had to go. But what I'm saying is, if that had been a real theater, that had been a regular screening, I wouldn't have been surprised if someone walked out because they said, this isn't what I'm here for. But for the right audience, you'll enjoy it.
You're doing this movie, right? And you want to be able to reach as much people as you can, but also what you said, one, Dennis is maintaining this aura of for the cinephiles. And then how do you please everyone? That's a really difficult task. And it's really, I think Warner Brothers and even Dennis, they wanted, we can see that in some scenes that they wanted to have a little bit of something for everyone, but not through the whole film. And that's the main problem with the movie. It's like how I'm with Sophia. I didn't read the books. I don't know anything about Dune. Like I'm a Star Wars fan. That's the thing that I compare it to the most. But so how do we make sure that the casual, not so cinephile moviegoer gets mesmerized I think that will do. I mean, I think the score may do it. To me, that's something that works. But how do we get them to come back? What do we have to do to get them to come back? And I'm not sure if maybe they did that. I think we have to wait till it comes out and people see it on HBO Max and people see it on the theaters. And I think Sophia said something very important that I have to reiterate. You need to see this movie on theaters. It's the experience in HBO Max is completely different. I mean, it's not, unless you have an amazing sound system, it's not gonna cut it. I'm not saying go to the theaters because I don't want to advocate to anybody. And if you feel safe, you have to go to the theater, right? But the best experience is going to the theater. Go see it to the theater. So I think in the end we have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think the box office is going to be a huge challenge and obstacle for this to overcome. I agree with you. IMAX, we got to see this in IMAX, and I can't imagine another way to see this. I don't think it'll be the same on HBO Max unless you have, like Rafy said, an amazing home system with like a sound bar and this incredible kick-ass TV with a beautiful picture, so you can do the movie justice. If you don't feel comfortable going to a theater, that's totally fine. And you're so valid for that because we're still in a pandemic. But seeing as we did go see it in the theater, I do want to recommend theaters to give it a chance there so you can get the full experience. But if you feel safer watching it at home, there's no problem with that. Watch it on HBO Max. And the advantage of HBO Max is it's a long movie. So if you have to pause it to go to the bathroom, you win there. It's not a problem because you know what? I can't blame you. I would probably want to do the same thing. But it's an option that I'm glad Warner Brothers gave everyone. But I do think the split might affect whether or not we get a part 2 or not.
Yeah, I think that's the reason why the directors are worried, because depending on the box office, how well it does, it could make the second part. And also, he is very keen on the cinematic experience of going to a theater. So, of course, he really wants people to see his film on the theater because he made the movie to be in, because not as on streaming services is definitely different from going to the theater and the surround system and the big screen. And he made the movie to be watched there, so maybe that's why we see the production or the directors are worried about how the movie is going to be and how much money it's going to make.
Yeah, they're definitely still a little bit scarred from Tenet. But you know what? We're going to move on. Those are great reactions. We're going to start with the spoilers. At this point, if you have not seen Dune, come back later to watch this video because we're going to get into a lot of discussion. And this is a film that has some pretty heavy spoilers, and you don't want to be spoiled with Dune. You should be spoiled watching it, not spoiled by what happens and you find out without watching it. So, giving you the warning, still here? Amazing. We're here to talk about the spoilers. And the first thing we're going to talk about is something that impressed me a lot, which were the sandworms. And I personally feel that the design on the sandworms were extremely well done. I liked how they talked about basically the sandworms run the desert. And you can kind of see that in today's society with how there's a lot of deforestation going on. There are a lot of animals who are losing their lives, and the jungle is technically theirs. So when you take away their home, they're going to have no other choice but to defend themselves. And I like that parallel that we saw in Dune. I think it's something that you can still see today.
I agree with you with the way Dennis created the time word, but I think what I liked about that is they added a different layer to the story. Not different. They added a next level layer of okay, what's going on here? Okay, well, how do we manage them? How do we control them? How do we get around them? It's that it's not that the movie doesn't have a main antagonist. It does, but it adds a different layer, a new layer of something else that we have to get around to. And I think even in, I mean, we saw it through the story. We saw it through we saw it specifically Oscar Isaac character, where they're explaining to him what they do, and they're explaining how do we get around them, right? So I think that was good that they dove into explaining the reason in they're there. Like you said, they basically run the desert. They said, but they mentioned it a bunch of times. This is sandworm territory, so we gotta move specific way in order to avoid getting detected and obviously be eaten by them. And they're big, and as the world that Dennis created. So it needed to be that. I think that the way that their design was done, it needed to be as big as the world that Dennis created, because it made that menacing, that monster type of a Langalore type of steel that we're gonna basically, he has that power. So I really did dig that they did, and pun intended, that they did the design of the sandworms, and how they explained it, how they dove into it. And again, it really did. It wasn't just a one thing. It played a role throughout the whole story. I think those things are, and the few of the action scenes that we have, those are the things that you get like into the story. You start getting your juices flowing. I like, okay, so this is good. What's gonna happen? What's gonna go next? So those are those things that work from the movie, that that if they once if they come back, obviously I hopefully they come back, but if they come back, that's a factor that's still gonna be there, and it's gonna affect wherever the story comes next, because they're there. So, and the way they were created. So I really enjoyed the whole concept of how their sandworms represent.
So I definitely agree with you. I also think those who have read the book are going to be impressed with the design, because this is an important character design to get correct. And my only small critique was in their last scene towards the end, when they really show themselves and you get to see the full like exposition of what they are. The lighting was so dark, and we were in IMAX on such a clear screen that I kind of wish I could see it. Like, look at this ring light in front of me. I see the light. I would have liked to have seen the sandworm a little bit better, so I could really like understand the scope, because I kind of got a picture, but it didn't amaze me enough for me to go,
You
I'm
wanted it in your
terrified.
face. You wanted the
I wanted
sandworm
it in my,
in your
yeah, I
face.
wanted the
Yeah.
sandworm in my
Yeah.
face. That was the
We
huge
got that. You
reveal.
said it. We got it to the end, but it wasn't. I understand where you're going. Yeah.
Yeah, the lighting works. Lighting works. I just wanted to see a little more light so I could fully see the monster, the creature that they are terrified of. And Anna, you had a great point to bring up about the sandworms.
So I think favorite part when it comes to talking about the sandworms and the concept is the spiritual layer that the sandworms have, because again, as Rafi said, it's it's a big ass it's a big ass worm, but at the same time, it also symbolizes like the how big the holiness is the sandworms with for the Furman. So I like the spiritual connection that it has with the people, it has with they rule the desert. And it also has that, certainly godliness to it. And it's definitely like a theme that I really like that they explored throughout the whole film. The themes of religion and spiritual beings, and it's something that I was, mesmerized by it.
So those were the sandworms in Dune. They're impressive. They really brought them to life. And I will say that while I have the minor critique of the lighting issue, Denis Villeneuve understood the assignment. So there, he's correct. Now we're going to dive into the political aspects. Now you have a huge rivalry between the House of Atreides, House of Arrakis, and House of Harkonnen. and you have alliances, betrayals. You have a space version of Game of Thrones going on right here in Dune, because you have House of Atreides trying to do the right thing, but you find out they also have a hidden motive with the spice. And you have House of Arrakis, who just wants to, you know, own their resource and nurture it and take care of it, and that they understand that it's going to be taken for trade and all of that, but they also are being abused and killed for the resource. And you have House of Harkonnen, which is the emperor, the evil ones, and you just want, they're just hungry for power. They want to control everything. So you have three different types of power here, and you have some characters who have good intentions, others who don't really have good intentions, and you see the political struggle. You know one's going to come out on top, but you don't know who that's going to be. And I wanted to ask you guys, what did you think of the power dynamics between the three houses, and who do you feel had the best reasoning? Who was the strongest in your opinion?
I like that you need to nail the coffin when nail the head when you mentioned Game of Thrones, because that was my first reaction when I was seeing all the different houses, right? That's the way to see it, because yeah, that's how it felt. It felt like a Game of Thrones, spin off when they're talking about. We'll see Mother of Dragon coming down, maybe in the sequel, with the dragons and Khaleesi do their thing. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, to answer your question, I don't think anybody had any heads. I mean, anybody was ahead of anybody. I think everybody had their strength and their weakness. Everybody had something that they needed from everybody else, so they had to do what we see obviously in real life to to get ahead of them, to steal from them, or to we have to kill them just to get the stuff that we need from them, right? And obviously we come to spices because that's basically, we'll talk about that later, but the main currency is the spices, or what maintains the spices. But I think I think two of the houses were the ones that I think everybody felt. I just think the script, the translation about the story, the process of the story, you and we'll talk about this next, but you start seeing the downfall of each of them and how they start going down, and the reason why they're going down. I mean, their actions and the consequences, how they start going down. So it's like nobody really had. They all had the individual political views and religious views also, but nobody really had a grasp of, we control this. I mean, we see Oscar Isaac's character constantly fighting, meaning discussing with his constituent, hey, how is this working? What do we need? How come we are so limited in this area? So what do we need to do? And he has to work with somebody else in order to produce what he needs, in order to maintain his people, to feed his people, to give the people what they need. So I never, even with the emperor, I didn't never felt that anybody had a head start with anybody, with the other houses. I think everybody had their strengths and weaknesses, which again, to me, that's a strong point for the movie. I mean, that's one of those points of the movie that you get interested in what's going on, the conversation, what they're doing to survive, to get the resources, to start a negotiation between the firms and the different houses. So I think that worked, right? But I think, just to answer your question, I think nobody really had a strong hold of any. Nobody was really ahead of anybody. I think everybody they all have to give up something. They'll have to sacrifice something in order for their the groups to survive in this world that that basically is dominated by the sandworms, and we'll have their corner. So that's one. I think that those different groups was also a strong part of the movie.
Yes, but I will say that I give a bit of the advantage to Harkonnen, just because they drew Atreides in, and the plan was sabotage. The plan was to take them out. Harkonnen had this huge army that the emperor assembled because they wanted to take out House of Atreides, because with them out of the way, they had more room to gain more power, which I felt where Oscar Isaac's character, which we're going to get to the humanity in a minute, but where his downfall began because he wanted to do the right thing, even though he had a small motive of he wanted that taste of power too. He tried to do the right thing, but it was too late when he realized it was a trap from the beginning, because once Atreides was out of the way, it was easier for Harkonnen to move in and gain more power. So, Anna, what are your thoughts on the power struggle and the power dynamics between these three houses? And if you will, the Game of Thrones between the planets.
So in the film, we clearly see there was a huge power dynamic between the three houses. However, what we don't see is who's behind, the power, who is the one moving the chess pieces. He, if you think about it, he is the one that has the full control, because he's the one that moved everything up to his, his stake. So he was the one that controlled everything. I thought it was interesting because it's also clearly a reality. That's something that we see like in our reality in some of the political consequences. And
So I think where you're going with this is just that Dennis is basically mirroring our society with these houses and with the way the houses present themselves and how they act with the environment. I think that's a good point. That's a really valid point. With what Dennis trying to do. So again, to me, that's a strong point for the movie.
Absolutely. And with that, we wrap up our topic on the political aspect. The book has so much more to offer. And what we've given you is a taste, because we don't know what's coming in part two, but we know based on what part one has given us that they're going to raise the stakes and they're going to up the ante when it comes to this. This is very important for us to discuss. And so is the next part, which is about the humanity that we see in Dune. Now, there are lots of deaths in this film. It is a film where, unfortunately, a lot of people, again, this is a spoiler review, if you've seen the movie at this point, some of the main cast gets the axe. Unfortunately, you get Oscar Isaac who gets the axe. You get Jason Momoa, Josh Brolin, a lot of people. And when a couple of them die, you do feel it. For example, Oscar Isaac, who wanted to protect his family, but he also wanted to look out for House of Atreides. So when it was his final moments, when he knew he was done for, he wanted to make sure that his family made it out, that he was able to save them. That's what he was thinking during his last moments. And with Jason Momoa's death, you also got the sacrifice element where he was loyal to his father. Then Chalamet becomes the Duke, and his allegiance transfers to him. And he knew in that moment, when it got to that scene, when they were trying to escape, that the only way they were going to get out was if he sacrificed himself. And he knew that the father would have done the same thing for him. So he knew in that moment he had to sacrifice his own life and fight to the very end. And you see that humanity in their eyes, which I think is something Villeneuve does so well here, because the death could have been meaningless, but it meant something here.
I want to say that maybe also, I'm jokingly, see, this is also a budget stuff. We gotta cut people because we're not going to be paying millions of dollars to all these actors. So I mean, and I say that jokingly because I completely agree with where Juan is going. And again, this is part of one of the strong suits of the movie for character development, for story development. We needed to get rid of these people, not just for budgets only, but also because it upped the ante of those few emotions that you felt through the story. And I say few because they're few, but they're there, right? So I think it's that. I think to me it's budget, but at the same time it's important that we needed to create some emotion, or we needed to express some emotions. And like Juan said, I think you know that I think what each of those people that died through in the story, they all had a reason why they were giving themselves for. And again, it comes back to Timothée Chalamet's character. Again, I think he's the protagonist of the story in essence. So I think it all comes back to them, but it worked. I think the way it was done, it didn't surprise me. I was kind of, as I see the story development, you kind of see it coming. I don't want to say it's predictable, but you kind of see it coming. But it's the emotions are still there. So I mean, it's difficult to process seeing those important characters or important actors getting killed so easily, not so easily, but so early on a story. But it needed to be done.
Yeah. And also it made it like look like a very compelling scene because the characters are, you start to care for them because you know what they were trying to do was for the greater good of the country. And seeing them die, just kind of resonates with the audience in the sense that he was such a good person, why did he have to die? But of course, on the other hand, we had that it was for to push the narrative of the story and make it more emotional.
Completely agree. And especially with Oscar Isaac's death, if you remember the movie,
Mhm.
when he passes away, they feel it. They had that connection to him, that emotional connected, that when he passed away, they knew he was gone. They felt it in that very moment that he fought to the end. And that's when Timothy Chalamet's character, Paul, knew that he had to rule because his father could no longer do it anymore, even though he
Even
sacrificed
with
himself.
Jason Momoa's character, he
Yeah,
felt it. Even with any characters, I think they all had the connection where
they
they
had the
all.
connect. I mean, he grew up with them. He was raised in House of Atreides, but the difference with Jason Momoa's, which is going to play into our next topic, but I'm going to give a slight little tease, is Timothy Chalamet dreamt of his death. He knew it was coming. It was a premonition, muerte anunciada, if you will. And he told Jason Momoa that he saw it in a dream. He saw how the ended up looking, and Jason Momoa basically didn't fear death. His character was very much in control of his own narrative, in control of his mortality. He knew that he was unstoppable. But in that moment, I think Jason Momoa's character realized not only was Paul correct in terms of predicting that, he knew that if he didn't do it, Paul wasn't going to make it, and everything was just, it went to shit. It just wasn't going to be worth it in the end. And he saw the greater vision. So he knew he had to face that fear. He knew his time was up. So I definitely think while Paul warned him, it doesn't feel real until you have no other choice, which is where the humanity aspect takes shape in this film.
Yep. I mean, I think it just it again, it's another layer. These deaths add another layer to the story, to the whole scope of what Dennis tried to do, and it worked.
And going back to Oscar Isaac's death, in a sense, he was given the option of having a little bit of humanity left when he decided to take his own life rather than to be taken by them. So
But he
that
did it.
also plays in
Yeah.
the aspect of humanity.
But he had a purpose. He took his whole life
Mm-hmm.
for a
Yeah.
promise that he had a reason to do that. I mean, I think and one said it. I think Oscar Isaac's character death is the more meaningful because it's the one that plays between the whole house. I mean, all the houses get affected by that death because of what he needed to do. In order to get to try. Spoilers, to try get rid of the emperor, which we see down the line that it really he didn't really die. So it's just it's the way. I mean, I think Oscar accepts death is the one that's most. I also Jason. I think both of them are really were done really well.
Yeah, and the thing is that both of them got to choose their own deaths in a way because again, Oscar Isaac, he chose to, take not the take, crush a tooth that had the venom on it, and Jason Momoa decided to, give his own life defending the family.
But also with Oscar Isaac's death, and I think this is the part where it means more, is he was betrayed right before then. He was stabbed, in the back by someone who he trusted. And you find out the reasoning for the betrayal. And you kind of do feel bad because you know Oscar Isaac would have helped if he could have and if he would have known the situation. But when that character gives him the opportunity to at least not his death be in vain, that's where I feel it means more. Because yes, he was betrayed and he knew his time was limited. He knew he was a sitting duck. He was going to be dead for sure. At least he went out, him thinking that it was going to make a big difference. He was going to take out, like Rafy said, the Harkonnen, the job of the not job of the Hutt, but like the guy, Stellan Skarsgård. Stellan
Yeah.
Skarsgård, him, that guy. So he thought he was going to take his character out, but like Rafy said, it didn't work. But his death was memorable because even towards the end, he fought for the future of his family. It's definitely time to move on to the next topic, which is the importance of dreams in Dune. Now, dreams are very important here because Paul Atreides is the one who is experiencing these dreams, these premonition style dreams where he sees what can happen. He has that sense and he can see things in his dreams. He sees Zendaya's character Chani. He sees the death of Momoa. He sees so many things that end up happening in real life, and he is seen as the possible figure that is gonna save everyone, which is the point, more or less. That at least that's what I got. That's the point, that he's gonna be the huge figure that can save everyone because he has that important aspect. And with the dreams, he definitely explores the fact that he just can see, not only can see everything, but he feels everything that much more. Especially in one scene, which I'm assuming is in part two, if that gets made, which is on the battlefield where he's in this gold armor, he's fighting, it's really cool, and he has the blue eyes, which is very much associated with the people from Arrakis, as if to say he has become a member of Arrakis. That's what I have understood. Again, I haven't read the book, but essentially you see Timothy Chalamet's character's future in that scene, and you don't get the fight scene because it hasn't happened yet, but he knows that's where he's going. And you also have the scene, the duel towards the end with Jamis, which we're going to get to. But that scene, he also had a vision where he saw what could have happened if he didn't take control. So he has controls over these dreams and these visions. He can change them and he tries to change them, but some things, fate is sealed. You only have so much control over your own narrative. So what did you think of the dreams?
That's, it's funny because that's when I come back to Star Wars and Anakin Skywalker and him being you mentioned it yourself, and him being the chosen one and him having these visions, and what the difference, you mentioned it, that he can control. But Anakin is just basically doing whatever the Emperor says. He can able to control the dreams. So at the same time, I think the dreams are really important in the character development of Poe, because basically the dreams is what's driving him to where he has. That's like the compass that he's using to see where he has to go, or to have a little bit of a understanding of where he has to go. So the dreams are really important for the story and for Paul characters. But I find it funny. I just find it funny because my first thinking was just, this is so Anakin Skywalker, and him being the chosen one, and I gotta rule the galaxy, because basically we're talking about a futuristic world, right? And that my dad is not here, so I'm the my lord now. So I understood what they were going with it, and how necessary those dreams are. But to me, I just found them to be just funny. I was just laughing at them because I was just seeing, me being the Star Wars fan that I am, I was just seeing Anakin just fighting with himself in the stories. Well, I don't want this to happen. And again, I think it's just something. It's another layer. It's a layer that adds to the story, to the character, that it needed to be there, because it's just, what it is. It just drives the character, and it develops the character for whatever we're gonna see. We'll see. Hopefully, we'll see. We'll talk about the ending now, but whatever we'll see in the next movie.
Yeah, I agree with Rafael Angel here because the dreams definitely were like a narrative staple on the story to be able to move forward. I also liked how at kind of at the end the he like kind of knew that some of his dreams were, they were not a mistake but rather they weren't what he thought they were, it was, because again one of them thought that he was going to be his friend, but the plot twist was, oh, he was going to be the enemy all along. And I thought it was really interesting because throughout the whole film we see, oh, this is true, this is what's going to happen, but no, it that's not what happened at all. So it's just like a point that not all his dreams are going to be the way they are.
Absolutely. And you both have a really good grasp on what the dreams mean in Dune. I think all of our perspectives really help encompass everything that Denis Villeneuve wanted to say. And now that you've mentioned the ending, we're going to talk about our final subject, which is the ending, or as I call it, the time when Zendaya is showing up on screen for more than a couple of seconds in a dream. Because as a mainstream fan and a fan of Zendaya, as a mainstream audience member and fan of Zendaya, I was very excited to see her in this film. She wasn't in it that long, but she has a very great line, which is, "This is only the beginning." And I find this so interesting because after the duel with Jamis, and you see how Paul is able to change the narrative, you do see Chani kind of like respect Paul more, even though he knows he has a lot to go. He has a lot to learn. And now comes to my critique about the ending. So what I feel is a negative for me for Dune is I'm going to use It as an example. It is a huge book, but the movie has a 3-act structure where it ends, has a proper ending, a proper closure, where if they didn't make chapter 2, you would be good with how it ends and you could rewatch it and you can enjoy it as a single story. My issue with Dune is it does leave that open ending. It is ambiguous because you're being set up for a great next part, but you don't really get an ending. You get 1-2 act structure where you're setting everything up and then it just ends abruptly and you're just like, well, if I don't get a second film, I'm just gonna be getting to the end and just being like, well, what could have been. So I feel that part, I do feel Denis Villeneuve took a big swing. It was a big risk because you are counting on a second film. If you don't get that second film, like unfortunately I have to bring up Blade Runner 2049, um, you do have that ending as open to a lot of things. You'd have to basically read the book to understand what happens. Not to say you wouldn't enjoy the book. Who's to say? You might. But you have a big film like this and you want it to at least have a proper ending just in case. Leave yourself open to a part 2, but don't automatically assume you get part 2 because you never know how the box office is. So you have a lot with the ending, and you story wise, we also have a lot with the ending from a critical perspective. So were either of you fine with the ending? Is this just me? Am I being critical on Dune? Because for me, that's a problem, but for many other people, it might not be.
I'm gonna jump in, man. I'm gonna go back to Zendaya. I think we were watching this together, obviously, the three of us, and
Yes.
I was laughing. Not Juan, but I was laughing because I know how Juan is with Zendaya, and I was like,
She's a
I was
queen.
also like complaining. I was like, when are we gonna see Zendaya? What we saw so many promos about her that we haven't seen anything. We haven't we saw that at the ending, and that's about it. And we saw them on the visions, on the dreams with Paul, and that's about it. And coming to the ending, I didn't mind. I think the thing is, I put myself on Warner Brothers shoes and what they want to do. So while I understand completely what you just said and the logistics of the how a movie so supposed to work, first second and third act, and you're supposed to end it with third act, right? Um, I just think that they really want to go big. They want to do some. They want to make a franchise out of it, which just makes sense. It makes money. But we spoke about this in the beginning of the review. If it doesn't sell, then you just basically, that's it. We have nothing. And I don't know. I kind of want to see more. I want to see. I think the second one should have more dynamics, more action. We should have more stuff going on. But I see where you're going. I mean, I don't mind the ending, but I completely understand your, the minuses of this specific way that they ended the movie.
Right, because as you and I have discussed in many other conversations we've had, we want to be more realist and not optimist in the sense of you don't know how the audience will react to the with the film, so that's going to determine your box office, and Hollywood is a business. So that's why I feel it's safer to do a film with a proper ending that will lend itself to a second film if possible. And I appreciate what he did. I don't hate the ending, but in that moment when it ended, I was like, oh, okay, well, I hope you get that sequel, because I'm gonna be really pissed if you don't, because then I'm just gonna end here rewatching Dune and just being like, now what? I gotta go to my local bookstore and get the book.
Yeah. Well, was like, whatever now. We don't know. We just leave it. Do you imagine the ending then?
I'll read the book. I'll pick up where the book left off. And
maybe that's what they try to do. They
Yeah.
want to sell books. I don't know.
I'll buy it at this point. But what I also want to get to, you mentioned Zendaya, thank you for that, is the marketing did rely a lot on her. So when you see how little screen time she gets, you can't help but feel disappointed, because you're like, hey, if she's this big character you're advertising, I'm going to show up and I'm going to show out and I'm going to make sure that I support this movie. But then she's in it like 15, 20 minutes. Y eso doesn't mucho. But
Y dijo dos palabras. Y dijo dos palabras.
Yeah, she said a couple of words and she was great. She's amazing in anything she does. So it does want me to hope that they get a second film so I can see more of her character. But the problem with marketing a film with a big star like Zendaya, for me, is when you let me down like this, you don't stick the landing. You make me leave the movie being like, if only they could have changed this, so that way I would have left happier. Because I always say the audience remembers how you start the movie and how you end the movie. And the way it ended for me was just like, well, cool. So Anna, you had something important to say about the ending.
So at the start of this review, I said that the movie felt that there were just a lot of scenes throughout the whole film, and throughout watching it, you just kind of check the hour of where are we now, what's gonna happen next, and you just don't really know how the movie is gonna end because there was so much to unpack, and you just don't know how or what scene is gonna end. So I'm with Juan on this one too. Like, I kind of was waiting on Zendaya because, again, the whole marketing team, they really market her as one of the main protagonists of the film, but it was actually Rebecca Ferguson. She is one of the main characters of the film, and we don't see her a lot throughout the marketing. So the ending was kind of really left like opened, and in the hopes of, having like a lot of money in the box office, and just really relying on the audience to really watch this film on theaters, which on the other hand, it is an experience to watch it on the theaters, but again, we're in the middle of the pandemic and there's the option of online streaming, and people are also going to have that option, and it is the safer way. So that also is gonna affect the film per se. So we really just have to wait it out, wait how it works in the box office, how Warner Brothers, what is their plan with this film, if they're gonna make it a franchise, if they're gonna stop. It really is just a really open ending to, again, like I said, they're testing the waters. They just want to know what's going to happen next with the film and with the franchise, and if the audience liked it or not, and just testing who it actually is the target audience of this film.
And it's a great thing, Anna, that you mentioned streaming numbers. I remember earlier this year, a small independent film from Warner Brothers called Mortal Kombat really did numbers on HBO Max, and they released that it was one of the highest streamed films on that platform. And their
Better
hope
than
for
the Snyder
Dune,
Cut. Better than the Snyder Cut in numbers.
yes, but what Warner Brothers is hoping with Dune, from what I have understood, is not only to be a box office hit, but if it fizzles a bit at the box office, but it can, for example, surpass Mortal Kombat's number, then they're going to see word of mouth is there. There is interest in the sequel, and they can go, well, we can make a slight exception because HBO Max did really good and the numbers ended up holding up. But we're probably going to have to decrease the budget a bit for Denis Villeneuve, which I would understand. It's the business. It's what it is. What it is. But this film is relying on a lot of word of mouth, and like we have mentioned, this film may not be for everyone. And those who do enjoy it are going to really, really gravitate to this. For example, fans of the source material, they're going to love this. Hopefully, they're going to be at least impressed. And some of them who really love this will probably have to watch this multiple times, not only to understand everything, because we didn't talk about everything. There's a lot to unpack with him. That's like a 5-hour episode that we'd have to do. That's like a podcast series, which we're not going to do. But
it's not a bad idea. We should do like a podcast series of Dune, just in case they do the sequel.
We could also do a book club and read the book. Just in case. At least we're halfway there. Then we only have to read half the book. But yeah, Dune overall, I think we can all agree, visually and technically, fantastic. Story-wise, it has its speed bumps, but the right audience member with the right patience can enjoy this film and will probably want to see more. Because even if we had speed bumps with the story, at this point, because of how it ended, now we have to know how it continues because of that open ending, which I will criticize because I get the artistic purpose behind it, but you know what? A sequel is never guaranteed in Hollywood. I'm sorry.
And you want to see more of Zendaya. That's the truth.
Listen, I will rewatch Malcolm and Marie for the royalties as well, but you know what? I felt a little lied to. I knew the character in the book wasn't that much until a certain point, but with all the marketing they did, I'm like, okay, she might be in here like 45 minutes, an hour. Maybe that's how it felt like. And then I played myself. I am Booble the Fool in this case. And overall, this film, I think it's Film Poser and Criticólogos approved, wouldn't you say?
Yep. I went in to see No Time to Die for Ana de Armas, so, and she was there for 10 minutes. So just go see it. Hey, go see it at the theaters. Don't see it in HBO Max. Honestly,
see it opening weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's where it will matter. If you want that sequel, if you want Dune to be a huge success, I know a lot of people critique a film being front loaded, but in this case, it would help a lot if you see it opening weekend, either in theaters or on HBO Max. If you're seeing it in a theater, IMAX, or a theater with a really high definition screen and Dolby Atmos, that's the way to go so you get the full experience. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much to Rafy for being on this episode. We truly appreciate it. We hope to have you back soon. So
thank you for the invite.
Rafy, where can they find you on social media?
Easy. I'm not gonna go through them all. Just go to criticologos.com and you'll see upstairs all the different social networks that we're at. And obviously, you can also go to rafymediavilla.com, which is my personal website, and you will see all my social media in there. So I'm not gonna mention everything individually.
Absolutely. And honestly, you should be following Criticólogos. Their coverage is fantastic. They do so much, and it's honestly a great platform to follow. I've gotten a lot of news there recently. Thanks to Criticólogos, I actually found out about the new Catwoman movie. So give them a follow, keep up with them, and they are certainly one to watch. And we thank them for the collaboration. Anna, where can they find you on social media?
So you can find me on Twitter and Instagram as Anna_Sophia.
And you can find me on Twitter and on Letterboxd at Leading Mohicans. And you can follow Film Posers on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. If you have TikTok, you can follow on TikTok. Again, thank you so much for watching. And remember, we're all film posers. Bye.